Becky.
Oh, hey, Danny.
How's it going?
It's good. How are you?
Did I catch you meditating?
No, I was just about to say, oh my God, have you seen the new Dharma Drops 3 mala bracelet from Spiritual Junkies?
Oh my gosh, aren't they amazing?
Amazing.
Amazing.
Amazing. Oh, Danny, you're good.
I know. I try. Did you hear about the new code for Dharma Drops listeners?
No, what is it?
15% off with code Dharma Drops.
So you're telling me if people go to spiritualjunkies.com and use the promo code Dharma Drops, DHARMADROPS, they can get 15% off their next purchase.
That's right.
Oh my God, that's amazing. So I have the Dharma Drops 3 and tons of other bracelets from the spiritualjunkies.com site, and I can't wait to get more. So that means if you go to spiritualjunkies.com, spiritualjunkies, spell that without looking at it, .com, you can save 15% on a single purchase using the promo code Dharma Drops, DHARMADROPS. This is Dharma Drops with your host, Rebecca Warfield. This podcast is a little bit about yoga, a little bit about life, and a little bit about whatever. And just as a warning, this podcast is unscripted, so that means I might regret a few things that I say. But hey, maybe I'll say some pretty awesome stuff too. Remember, these are musings, not truths. Buckle up, giddy up, because here we go. Hey, Dharma Drops listeners, it's me, your host of Dharma Drops podcast, Rebecca Warfield, and I am here today with Natalie Banks, best-selling author of domestic suspense novels and president of Writing Champions Project, and I should add, meditator and awakened being. How's it going?
Oh, it's great. I'm so happy to be here today.
Yeah, thank you for joining me. So before we get into any like the yoga, meditating, awaken biz, let's just chat for a second about you because we don't actually know each other. We met through Instagram when I was giving away some seeds.
Yes.
Yeah. So have you planted your seeds?
I haven't. I've got them all set out on the counter waiting for me to do it. And they're calling to me. It's kind of ironic that we are just meeting and over seeds, the irony of new budding friendship.
So tell me a little bit, I want to hear about your book. So I have an English background. I have both a bachelor's and a master's degree in literature. So I'd like to hear a little bit about your books before we get into the other stuff.
Absolutely. I love talking about my writing. It's one of my number one passions. It's hard to say that you can only have one passion because there's so many things to be passionate about. But writing is definitely at the top of my list. And I write books that I feel help people, but they're not self-help books. They're stories that people can relate to, typically centered around a female character. But there's plenty of male characters in the books as well. And it's about a woman that is facing some sort of crisis in either a personal relationship or in her own well-being and how she deals with it and overcomes it in the end. I feel that I've always had this call that I wanted to, we all need like a helping hand, like somebody to support us or be there for us. And I always felt the call to do that. And when I figured out I could do that, jointed with writing, which is such a passion of mine, it just all started falling into place because I was really looking for a way to help the world because, we all, want to help each other and we all have our different gifts. And it's just really cool to see how that worked out for me. And because when you put the intention out there that that's what you want to do, the universe will bring back and show you that it's working. And so I do get emails and letters from people. Like one of my books is about a woman who had an affair. And, there's a lot of drama, of course, in the story. But, the overall arc is the woman being able to heal and forgive herself for the affair. And I get emails from people saying, I had an affair 20 years ago, and after I read your book, I was able to forgive myself. Or, another book, there was a woman lost a child, and, a woman told me, I lost a child, and, I blamed myself in a lot of ways. And after reading your book, I was able to forgive myself. And so and it's just so cool to get that kind of feedback. Like, it still like brings tears to my eyes because it's just so amazing how the universe works. Anyway.
And what a gift that is to be able to offer to be in service of others through something that you love. Because I think for a lot of folks, they're seeking that out. How can I be of service? So it's really beautiful that you were able to find that in a creative way too.
Such a huge blessing.
Yeah. So how did you come to writing? Have you always been a writer, or was it something that arrived later in life?
I've always been a writer. When I was, I guess about 12 years old, I had read a book. I was actually on a flight to Colorado, and I had read a book that had a horrible ending. You know, one of those endings where you're like, you did not just do that. And so I was crying. I didn't know what to do with my emotions, and I didn't have anybody to talk to about it. So I was in such a state of panic. All I could think is, I have to fix this for this character. And I had never, I mean, you're 11, you've not taken writing classes. But so I just pulled out my notebook and started writing. And I read the book again, the ending part, to where it got to where it went off track, in my opinion, and then read my new ending, and I loved it. And when I closed my notebook, I knew then that I was a writer. So it's kind of a cool way to discover something that you love.
That's really cool. And you mentioned something a few moments ago about putting intention out there. And so, I do write, but I don't write fiction. And I'm always go back and forth about whether I would even want to write fiction, because to me, the prospect of creating something like that is so overwhelming to me that it's like I go in shutdown mode. So I'm curious to know, like, where do you set intention for inspiration in your writing, or does it just arrive to you like a download from the universe? Where does this come from?
I would definitely say there's a download going on. I think that that's part of being in my divine calling. I think that helps, that when you find your niche, that what you're, supposed to do, that helps. But I do spend a lot of time in, meditation or prayerful state, asking the universe for help, and then I just kind of surrender and try not to overthink it, because when I try to put hands on and try to control rather than allow, that I get a little bit more stuck.
I think that is like key for me in terms of creation. So I've always said for Dharma Drops that I'm not controlling what happens with the podcast or the business. I'm just back here in the back seat, making sure it doesn't crash. And I think the best way to, quote, control something is to let go of control.
It's so true.
In what ways then do you do that? Because it's just hard for me to wrap my brain around in terms of writing, because I come from an academic background where there's like a sort of a tremendous amount of control over like information, research, ideas. And so it's just such a foreign idea to me about sort of letting go of control and letting the creative process take over.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do it?
Well, the main thing is I feel like the universe drops seeds for me. So maybe I'll read a news article headline, or I'll watch a movie, or just I'll hear a conversation that someone's having, and it'll be like this little droplet of information. And then soon it just like spirals into this whole story. And I know the story and what it's going to be. And then the details come in the writing. When I start writing, like I'll have maybe, when I start 5 or 6 bullet points. And then it's almost like, I feel like in some ways it's like painting a picture that, once you start putting the paint on the canvas, it becomes clearer and clearer what direction that you want to take. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how it works for me. I know other writers have different processes. I'm less of a planner because I just kind of like to allow and let it flow, because when I plan, I start kind of like what I was saying before. I feel like I'm putting my hands in the pot where I shouldn't. But I mean, I get a lot of inspiration from the outside. And then, sometimes it might be a combination of, somebody I know, a movie I saw, a book I read, a documentary, and like all these different elements come together and swirl in my head and create this thing it's kind of difficult to explain. It's kind of like, I guess, like my daughter is a singer, and to get her to articulate how she sings, it's like almost impossible because it just comes from her.
Yeah, my boyfriend was talking recently. I think he heard on like a Joe Rogan podcast or something. They were talking about the muse, and like you just have to show up for the muse. You have to show up every day and be open to it, whatever that means. And I didn't hear the whole conversation. He was just telling me about it. But when I think about that, I think that that's the important part, just showing up and just letting it happen, being receptive to that.
Yes, I think that's so important because we are, if when we start stepping in, we start overthinking, that can cause us problems in so many areas of life, but especially in something creative. Like if you writing nonfiction, I mean, obviously it is more of a thinking process, but I'm sure in some ways too it flows because you do your research and then it comes the way that it's meant to be presented.
Yeah, and before we restart, I can't even say it. Before we started recording, why is that so hard to say? We were talking about. I just finished my yoga practice around just a few minutes after 10. It's 10:42 right now when we're recording, and so my yoga practice is still fresh on my mind. And even my yoga practice is a little bit like that. You just have to step into it. And meditations like that. You just have to drop into it. And the more you try to tighten the grip on what that experience is like, the less arrives from it, so you just have to sit down, show up, and be open.
Absolutely.
And so with that in mind, you said that you have a meditation practice too, right?
Yes, I do. Ideally, I like to try to meditate 3 times a day. But before people get in awe, realistically, that does not happen on most days. That's my goal. And on the days that I actually do it, I'm like, hoorah, and I can see a difference in my day when I do it. My joy is fuller, like I'm more patient, I'm more fulfilled, I feel healthier, I have more energy. But life is life, and we're humans. We're walking around these flesh bodies, and sometimes it's like, oh, I don't feel like doing that, when I'm forgetting that if I did it, I would feel better.
Mm-hmm. But what was it that you just said before we went live? What did you say about if you don't have time to meditate?
Yeah, it's not my own quote. I can't take credit for it, but I've heard that if you don't meditate more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you don't have time, you're doing something wrong.
How did you arrive to the meditation practice?
Well, I actually grew up in a strictly religious home. And there was a part of me that always felt like that there was definitely truth to there being a God, a higher power, something out there that loved and cherished me. But I just, even from a very, very young age, I did not like the I guess, I don't know if this is the right word, the dogma, the rules, the harshness, and, the going to hell, and the God hates sin. And I'm like, what sin? And, like there was just so much that just curled my toenails, even as a small child. And like, I'll tell you a funny story, because I don't want to offend anybody that is a Christian or has these beliefs, because I think we're all on our own spiritual journey and we are where we're supposed to be at the moment. But the church that my parents took us to believed in what they call the rapture. And I don't know if you're familiar with that, but
I am. I grew up in a not a super religious home, but I did go to a Catholic school, and I've had a lot of interesting experiences with religion in my life. So I do know about the rapture.
I just, like, in my soul, I knew that wasn't true, but it scared the sheets off of me. Like I could not sleep at night because I was so afraid of this rapture thing, because it didn't feel right to me and I didn't want it to happen to me. And so I would pray to God every night, please, God, I'm talking about like 7, 8 years old. Please, God, don't rapture me. I want to be in eternity with you, but I do not want to be raptured. Please. So that was kind of like my start of my journey of going, to realize that maybe religion wasn't the path that I was meant to be on. And as I grew up, that, and you grew up with it too, it's hard to shake those rules, regulations. The fears are highly ingrained. And as I grew up, I continued, trying to go to church because in my soul, I wanted to connect with something outside of me that, I guess that's the wrong word because God is in us. But I guess at that time, I wanted to connect. I knew that I was missing something, I guess is the right word to use. I knew I was missing something and I didn't know how to fix it. So I was going, as an adult, in dragging my, young children to these, non-denominational churches. I thought, oh, this is the answer because, they're non-denominational. But then, you see so many flaws, the hypocrisy. And then like they'd say one thing, in their teaching, and then it would just be completely, opposite in another teaching or something I would read. And finally, I had just had enough. And I said, okay, I'm just done. God is not in a building. He's everywhere and he's in everything. I just knew that kind of inherently. And so that started my journey and I started learning about Buddhism and, that led to more, research and just, putting my toes in the water of what meditation was. And the first time that I meditated, I had such an euphoric experience. Because I think the universe, gives you breadcrumbs. And when you get on the right track, I think you get rewarded quickly. Mm-hmm. Yes, she's getting it. And after that, I knew that God was so much more and that my perception of him being in everything was true. And that included being, in me. And that's where my journey is. And, and I'm it's been probably 6 years. And I want to say that every day's been easy. There's been some trials in learning to, a new way of thinking. Because, they say the subconscious is programmed before the age of, 6 or 7. Mm-hmm. And so it's hard to break away from these subconscious fears and rules. Am I doing something wrong? And, the church would think that meditating is evil. There's a lot of stuff like that. And, there were times that I felt very alone because there wasn't a lot of talk about, even 6 years ago, there was not a lot available to me for where my belief system, I guess, so to speak.
I had some similar experiences. I identify with your story a lot. So I grew up in a Presbyterian home, not super religious, but, conservative enough in that regard. But I went to Catholic school, which that in itself creates a lot of conflict because they're not really this. I mean, they're similar belief systems, but not entirely. Oh. But Catholic school, I was there in the 80s in elementary school, and I don't know what Catholic school is like now, but it wasn't amazing in the 80s and the early 90s, I guess, too. But, I remember in first grade, maybe second grade, but I'm pretty sure it was first grade, my teacher saying, if you even think for one moment you might go to hell, you will go to hell.
My goodness.
And from first grade up until at some point in my 30s, I was afraid of my own thoughts because, when someone says something like that to you, the first thing you think is, I'm going to hell. Yeah. First thing that comes to your mind. And then you're like, oh God, I thought it. I'm going to hell. Oh shit, I just said it again. I really did spend decades of my life terrified of my own thoughts and what that meant for me in, afterlife, or I don't even really believe in afterlife these days, but what that meant for me, in the second phase of this life cycle, if you will. And then when I got to the yoga practice and my teacher said to me, you are not your thoughts. Your body, your thoughts, your soul are all separate things. It was like my world both imploded and exploded all at the same time. And it was, for me, it was very complicated and a lot of work had to be done to figure that stuff out. So it's been a lot of sweat and tears on my yoga mat. But for the last few years or so, I feel like that's, worked itself out. And of course, on to the next problem.
It's always a journey.
Yeah, to deal with on my yoga mat. But I definitely understand that because it takes a lifetime to really break through some of those patterns and thought patterns that you learn.
Yes, it does so much so.
Mm-hmm. And so, I'm sorry for interrupting. So you meditate then, you try 3 times a day?
Yes, I do. I do a short, grounding meditation in the morning. Try to, like 20 minutes. And then the midday is either going to be like a 45-minute kind of relaxing meditation, or I do walking meditations, which is semi new. And I think the walking meditation has been almost as impactful as the first time that I meditated.
Oh, interesting. Why do you think that's so?
Because what it's doing is it's training your mind to stay focused and present while you're moving and your eyes are open. Because when you lay down or sit in, a position to meditate, you close your eyes and you ground there, and you're still, you're quiet, you're focused. It's easier, not when your thoughts are running, but if you practice at it, it's easier, to get into that moment. When you're walking, you're moving, you're seeing things, you're seeing people, dogs, cars, it's a different thing. And you're starting to learn that, yeah, I can experience this every minute. Like, I can just drop in at any moment. I'm learning that I can do this, which is a powerful tool because, like I said, we're in flesh suits right now. And so we're going to respond to stuff. Things are going to happen. But like you said, we're not our thoughts. So if somebody's rude to us and immediately our reaction is, I cannot believe she just treated me that way. Well, we can say, okay, wait, I'm not my thought. The human flesh body had that thought. Now I can choose what to do with it. And that gives another tool in our toolbox that we can, drop into that state of peace and well-being.
So let me ask you, because honestly, I don't do a tremendous amount of meditation. I'm a moving meditator in the sense of my yoga practice really is my meditation practice. I mean, I do like brief meditation in the beginning of my practice. But to sit down and close my eyes and meditate, maybe I just need to do it more, of course, but that often doesn't really resonate with me. But I feel like a walking meditation, because movement really works for me. And so I feel like a walking meditation would work. So if I wanted to start a walking meditation practice today, what do I do?
I would strongly suggest doing a guided one. There's a plethora of them on YouTube.
Oh.
And what I always recommend to people...
Sorry, there's a jet flying over. 1 second. I'm sorry.
What I would strongly recommend is for you to go on YouTube. There is a plethora of choices, and you can just do in the little search bar, walking meditations. And I strongly recommend to people that ask me for suggestion about meditating is to find actually a handful of meditations that look interesting to you, and you'll be surprised how the universe will draw you to the right ones. Mm-hmm. And then just push play. Don't meditate. Just push play and listen to the person. Listen to their voice. Listen to the backdrop. See how you feel, because your true self will speak up and will tell you, yes, this is going to work, and you'll know. And then you just try that one. And even if you are like, you choose one and then you end up, I actually don't like this one, that's okay. Just choose another one. But I just think it's important to listen before you actually try to meditate, because if you choose somebody that their voice, doesn't resonate with you, or you just don't like the way that they're guiding the meditation, then, it's going to disturb you and you're going to have trouble getting into it. And then also another thing I recommend that for newbie meditators, you're going to have thoughts. Thoughts are going to come in your head, but the saying is, what you resist persists. So rather than saying, I'm having thoughts and getting upset, what I do, and still to this day, I have to do it sometimes, I say, I see you. Okay, you came. And I just watch it like it floats by like a cloud. Mm-hmm. I just, I'm away. Okay, I'm having a thought. No big deal. Shoo, go on.
Yeah, for sure. I have a similar practice, like in my yoga practice or in the event that I am sitting down and meditating. What I like to do is when I recognize the thought, I'll give it a label just so I know what it is. Oh, that was worry. And then I watch it. Like I almost like pretend it's like a little box or something, and it just like goes away. You know what I mean? It's like a little object that leaves. And then I'm like, oh, that one was something from my to-do list, and then let it go. So that way, because I know a lot of people talk about like a cloud or a wave. For me, I feel like I need to identify the thought first before I can let it go. And that seems to be pretty helpful for me.
That's powerful, because that's true awareness right there.
Yeah, and for me, I think what it does too is it teaches me the patterns of my thoughts, and I start to notice, like, gosh, everything I'm thinking is coming from my to-do list, or
Yeah,
everything I'm thinking is worry, and so I start to get a little more clarity about what's just happening in my brain.
that's fantastic. I love that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I think it's a really good piece of advice to listen to the meditation first. Have you ever, like, I don't know, turn on a workout video or something, like you're so excited to do it and then you get the video on and you're like, ugh,
Mm-hmm.
I hate this. And it kind of sours your mood for it a little bit.
It's a demotivator.
Yeah. So I think that's a really good piece of advice to listen to it before you actually practice it.
Mm-hmm. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So you also mentioned that you do some other practices such as the law of attraction, which I actually do not know a tremendous or know much about. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Well, they're discovering in physics and some stuff that even Einstein knew about is that, like attracts like, or whatever action you put out, there's an equal and opposite reaction, meaning it returns to you. Um, it, it, Law of attraction is an overused phrase these days. A lot of people are saying, I'm using the law of attraction because I'm trying to manifest a marriage, or I'm using the law of attraction because I'm trying to manifest, money or fame or something like that. And the reality is that every second of our lives, we are manifesting. Whether it's subconscious beliefs or outward things, wherever your focus goes, that's what the universe is going to return to you. And I'm by no means an expert. I'm still learning, and I would strongly recommend anyone listening, to do more research and, learn for yourself. But a lot of times, like if we're, like you said, one of your challenges is worry, and it's one of mine as well. And so if we're worrying, we're actually putting our focus on that worry, and we're given that permission to return into our life. So, like, with my books, this is a good example. When I write a book, I don't. It's as a human, you get afraid. What are people going to think? Oh, I hope they like it. But I make a choice and I say, no, I'm not going to worry about that. Maybe somebody's going to criticize, maybe they're not. But I focus on the intention of why I wrote the book. And I see the book as successful, whether it sells 10 copies, it sells 1,000 copies. My goal is to touch people. And so that's where I kind of try to keep my focus. And that's what I get back. Like, I get back that this book is touching people. So, this is like a really loaded conversation, because I could really talk to you probably all day about this. But I think, we need to be very aware of the energy that we're putting out, because if we're like putting anger or resentment out into the universe, that's going to come back to us in some way. Whether we're going to get more situations to be angry about, we're going to draw more of that into our lives, or if we're putting out happiness and joy rather, we're going to see the universe bring it back to us. And I'm reading a book right now. I cannot remember the author's name, but it's called E Squared, and it's 9 energy experiments to show that what we put out into the world is what we get back. And I love it because the person in me, I'm by nature skeptical, hence my, the religious experience. So I like the physics behind this. And I love the energy experiments. And I apologize that I don't remember the author's name, but
That's okay.
E Squared, 9 energy experiments. Then,
and I'll put it in the show notes for everyone listening, so that way they can find it right there.
Wonderful. Mm-hmm. And I've done 6 of them so far, and I don't want to spoil it, because if you guys, it's so fun.
Oh, so they're experiments that you can do.
Yes.
Oh, I thought they were just like stories of experiments. That's cool.
No, these are like hands-on experiments you can do. And even me, with a core developed belief of, our energy attracts the things into our life, what we're believing and what we're putting out. And even for me, like, I've just been mind blown So I think it's so cool. I would strongly recommend anyone to get that book because it's
I'm going to check it out. That sounds fun to do the experiments yourself to witness how this law of attraction works. That's cool.
and she does it in a fun way. It's not like this holier than thou. She doesn't use a lot of physics terms. Like it's like a read for anybody, really.
I think what you said too is really important here because whenever I hear the phrase law of attraction, I can be a little skeptical too. And sometimes when I hear law of attraction, I roll my eyes a little bit because, I hear people, I think like you said, misuse the term a little bit. They're like, oh, well, I'm going to think about wanting this and I'm going to get it. And I'm manifesting everything I want in my life. Not that that's wrong necessarily, but I think that's only half of the story because the other half of the story is, like you said, it's not just about getting things you want and having all the pleasures in the world. The law of attraction is also about all the things you don't want and how to not do that too. You know what I mean? And so if you are putting out, negative energy or bad vibes or worry or anger or fear, like you said, that it reflects back to you. And I think that when people talk about the law of attraction, they forget to talk about that part sometimes.
They do. They really do. Because, wouldn't it be nice if there was just a fairy godmother and we go, we wish, blah, blah, blah. But, if it works for the pumpkin to turn into a coach, it's also going to work for her losing her shoe and running down the steps, it's going to, if it works for one, it's going to work for the other. And you can't leave that part out because there's so many people they're trying to attract.
There's that jet again. Sorry for interrupting, but I don't know what's happening today. There's like all these jets flying overhead.
You need to look up, what does it mean when I hear airplanes or, some kind of spiritual symbolism?
I know, because, like sometimes you see like an owl or something and it's like your spirit animal. But this time I guess my spirit animal is a jet.
Yeah. Definitely there's a message.
I don't know what the message is. Sorry for interrupting you. What were you saying?
I forgot.
Sorry. We were talking about law of attraction because it can, and I don't want to offend anyone, but sometimes it can just feel a little hokey to me, where it's just like this magical thing that happens. But the law of attraction, from my understanding of it, also suggests that it's not just about wishing, wanting, hoping, praying. It's also about doing the work that needs to be done so you can have these things that you want out of your life.
Yeah, you got to have action, and it's more than just like, it's also working on yourself and, meditating and staying and focused in the energy that you want to create. Because I remember what I was saying is, like, if a woman, let's just say, and I definitely don't want to offend anybody, but I hope this can, maybe plant seeds or bless someone. If someone's trying to, quote unquote, manifest a husband, let's say she wants to get married more than life, and she's trying to manifest a husband, and she keeps having these bad boyfriends, maybe getting her heart broken all the time. There's something, a core belief that she's actually attracting rejection. And sometimes we're not even aware of what we're focusing on. They say we have 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day, and we're only aware of about 10% of them.
Whoa.
They said that 90% of those thoughts are the exact same thoughts on repeat that we've been having our whole life. Maybe it's a little different story, but it's the same core thought belief. And like you said, we are not our thoughts. We are not our thoughts. It's a biological effect of our brain. Mm-hmm. But that is responsible for putting what energy we're putting out. And I think that that's where the elevation comes in, is when we learn to start to recognize these thoughts. Like you were saying, that's why that was so powerful to me. Okay, that's worry. And then start to dive in and think, what vibration am I putting out into the world? How am I showing up in the world? And, what do I want to do about this? And being very aware of, and rather than letting the biological brain just run and wreak havoc in our lives, actually thinking about, maybe you're like a super sweet person and then you get mad because a driver cuts you off. Well, that's an unconscious thought.
That's
maybe
me right there. You just described me.
you're such a sweet person. That's not really who you are. That's just a thought,
Mm-hmm.
And then say, okay, well, why did I think that thought? Well, because they were rude. They were disrespectful. Why did I feel like they were disrespectful? There could be a core belief, something that happened when you were 5, that somebody pushed you out of line for ice cream and you developed this thought. I mean, it could really be as simple as that. And you put an intention out to the universe and say, you know what, I want to know what my negative core beliefs are. And the answers will start to come. And I'm going to tell you from firsthand experience, it's not always comfortable. But I'm so glad now when I have it, like I'm going through something right now. I'm not going to discuss in detail, but I was at first, I did that initial reaction where I was mad. Like, I cannot believe that they would be so disrespectful to me. That's so hurtful. And then it came to me, it's like, this is a lesson. And I was like, oh, even though I don't like the way this feels, I'm so happy that I recognized it.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the past, I would have just dove in. I'm going to have to talk to this person. We're going to have to deal with this. They can't treat me this way. This is wrong. It's not professional, And then I'm like, now, oh my gosh, no. That doesn't mean that I'm going to roll over and I'm going to take it. But I'm going to come from a place of love and recognizing where I'm at, why I'm responding this way. If that makes sense.
It does. And, you just made me think too, while I was listening, for those of you listening, we're recording this still during the coronavirus pandemic, which, I mean, I feel like every episode for the last 2 months I've been saying that, but it's still happening. And of course, we've been spending a lot of time at home. And you were saying that sometimes these beliefs that we have or these reactions come from something from when we were like 5 years old. And I haven't had a lot of things like, trigger me. I haven't seen anyone or done anything in 2 months, but I've had, like most people across the world right now, some time and space. And what I've noticed is some really weird things have been arriving, some like old memories or old fears or old things that I felt guilty about that I've kind of forgotten about.
Mm-hmm.
And they just started to bubble up in my yoga practice or sometimes laying in bed. And I've had the time and the space, I think, for that stuff to come up. And obviously it's a cue for me to work that stuff out. And some of the stuff I'm talking about, like when I was a small child, like I was thinking about when I was like a little kid, I remember like someone stole something from me and like how mad I was. And like, I couldn't like convince her to like admit that she stole it. And then I found it in her house. I mean, we're talking like decades ago. And how here I am in my late 30s, I actually felt mad about it still when I thought about it. And I was like, wow, that's a lot of like anger that's just been sitting there for a long time that I didn't know how to resolve. Yeah. So my point about this is I think the work that we're talking about here, meditation, law of attraction, yoga, whatever it is, it opens up the space for that work to be done.
Yes.
Because it's all there. Our experiences, they don't just go away just because our lives move on. They don't just go away. They're still there.
Yeah. And you're so right about, having this time and space right now, because our lives are filled with so much distraction because the world is all about busy. And so we push down like all of these thoughts, hurts, things that from the past, they just get buried. But they, like you said, they don't go away. And this has given us all such an opportunity to start seeing all of this. So even though the coronavirus is heartbreaking and devastating in so many ways, in other ways, it's been a gift.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So in terms of the coronavirus, we didn't even talk about that yet, and we don't even need to talk about it too much. I feel like everyone's talking about it, but how have things been going for you in terms of the coronavirus?
Oh, well, I actually, because I'm a writer, I work from home. And then my husband also, he works from home. So we're used to being at home anyway. So it hasn't affected us too severely because it's just, part of our everyday routine is to be together and be at home. It's hard for me. Like I said before, worry is a challenge for me. And I love people so much that I have to be very careful about the news. Mm-hmm. Because I can catch myself getting into a spiral of worry and heartbreak when I read a story about somebody that's died, or businesses that are closing down. I will literally take on all of their pain and heartache and try to share it with them. And it's just, that's not the right answer, because I need to send out love and, good energy and hope for them rather than that. So I think that's been a big challenge for me, is just to kind of try to stay away from the negativity of it, so that I don't, add to the negative energy that's going on in the world.
Yeah, the news wraps me in a cycle of anger.
Yeah.
I get angry, and then I feel like I can't focus for the rest of my day. In fact, this morning, I think I watched 30 seconds of the news, and I was like, nah, this has to go. I just can't.
Good for you, because a lot of people have trouble saying no to it.
No, I love turning off my TV. Just get out of here. So in terms of the work that we've been talking about, maybe just to bring the conversation full circle, and I think you touched on this a little bit in the beginning of our conversation. So meditation, law of attraction, do you feel like these practices have a direct effect on your creative process and your writing?
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Because if I go into, let's say, a writing practice and I'm stressed out, or I'm letting fear of what people are going to think run the roost, then I'm not going to be open for that channel of flow. I'm going to stop that up. That's a surefire way to shut me down. So definitely, if I'm I meditate and I'm in, a right frame of thinking, putting out the right energy, believing in, the connection to the universe that I have, then yeah, it's going to flow like water, but it's not always easy. There's days, like you said, just, waking up on the wrong side of the bed, it's hard. This human role we're playing is not for the faint of heart.
Oh, is that your dog?
Yeah, that's
What type of dog do you have?
it's a Papillon.
Oh, I have a dog too, but he's not in here because he snores so loudly that you can hear him in the recording the whole time. He just sits at the desk and snores so loud that you can hear him recording.
What kind of dog do you have?
I have a French bulldog. His name is Hank.
Oh my gosh, so cute.
So last night, this is totally off topic, but this is just how things roll on Dharma Drops podcast. Last night, I don't know what channel it was. They were showing a dog show. And my little French bulldog, he was so cute. He sat in the bed and watched it forever.
Oh,
cute. He watched the whole dog show.
He's so smart. He's like, look at all those friends I can have.
Well, the weird thing is, if we take him to the dog park, he just looks at all the other dogs like, ugh, God, and turns his back to him. He doesn't want anything to do with dogs in real life. And then he watches a dog show, and he's just like as alert and attentive as can be.
Oh, maybe he's watching to make sure they don't actually arrive.
Yeah.
Don't come out and see and visit.
So in any case, sorry, off topic, but a dog can get me off topic really fast because I love dogs.
Me too. We definitely share that love.
Mm-hmm. If you don't like dogs, I can't trust you.
Yeah, I know. And I've ever heard people say, I don't like dogs. I'm like, okay.
And if my dog doesn't like you, I really can't trust you.
Yeah. Isn't it strange how they are particular? Like, I've got a dog that loves everybody. Like, he's never met a stranger. And there's been 2 or 3 people in the 8 years that I've had him that he was just like, I will murder you if you get near my mom. I'm like, okay, that's scary.
Yeah, they're interesting little creatures for sure. Sometimes I don't know what gets Hank wound up. Like, he'll see a dog and just look at it like whatever. But then one day we took him for a walk and he saw like a big rock and he did not like that rock. I was like, I don't know what's up with the dog psyche sometimes. I'm like, I'd be curious to know what's going on in that little brain of yours. So sorry, we're totally off topic about dogs. So we're talking about the creative process and flow, and, just going back to the yoga practice too. I feel like that's something that the yoga practice helps me get into, which I think for some people it's the meditation practice, or even journaling, whatever, opens up the channel, is to discover that flow state. And for me, and I think what you said too, when the thoughts get in the way, the worry, the fear, the doubt, the flow state is completely blocked.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, for sure.
And so for me, what I like to think about sometimes too is just sticking with the practice, because the more we can arrive into that flow state through our practices, I think the easier it is to get in that flow state whenever we need to be there.
Absolutely. You're so right.
Mm-hmm. So one thing too that we never finished talking about, because we just go all over the place on Dharma Drops podcast, we never finished talking about your 3-step meditation process. So just to get back to that really quickly before we wrap things up. So in the morning, you do a grounding meditation. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Afternoon walking. And then what's the last one?
Then the last one is really trying to tap into the universe, which, everybody has a different name for the energy that surrounds us. I call it the universe or God, because that's how I see God, as the creative force that flows through everything. And I find that when I'm able, Joe Dispenza, I listen to a lot of his work. And I've just recently been doing some of his meditations, and his meditations are a little out there. I would not recommend them for a newbie meditator, because you're going to get turned off real quick, because he is out there. But I've just been kind of like sticking my toe in the water with his. And what I have found is, because what he calls the universe, he calls it space. So like the space, like the stars and, whatnot. And he calls that the creative consciousness that flows through everything. But what I found that has really begun to work for me, and it doesn't have to be, Joe Dispenza meditation, is when I'm able to just fully surrender into that divine energy. Like it's almost like when when you lay in a pool and you kind of backflow and you just let go. Mm-hmm. That's how I feel when I kind of just drop into the universal energy, the flow, God, however somebody wants to look at it, almost like just feel like you're getting wrapped up in this blanket. And I feel like it just like sets me free from the day. I'm able to let go of what I did do, what I didn't do, what mistakes I made, and just kind of like, it's like a loving practice for myself, and just resting and saying, I'm doing the best I can, and it's okay. And then I try to, do a visualization of, seeing my day the next day or the next month, or what I want to accomplish, how I want to feel, what I'm trying to, bring into my daily life. I see myself as that and try to feel that at the end of the meditation.
Visualization is really powerful work. And there's a lot of research that shows that, if you if you can see it, you can believe it, and that visualization really does help us move forward into like stepping into whatever we want our lives to be.
It's so true. I mean, like if somebody wants to say they want to lose, 10 pounds, if every day they only see themselves as 10 pounds overweight or 10 pounds over the weight they want to be, and they can't visualize themselves as 10 pounds lighter, they will never be able to get rid of that 10 pounds. Or if they do, they'll gain it right back. Because you literally have to become the person that you want to be. You have to see it, you have to feel it. So, my ultimate goal is to always treat others with love and to be joyful and peaceful, and I know that that's not fully realistic for being a human being, but that's my goal, to live in that state. So when I go to sleep at night, that's how I try to see myself, with energy, overflowing with joy and love, because abundance is more than just money. People say, oh, I want abundance. Well, if you had money, what does that, if you're unhappy or you're not feeling well, so that's very important for me at night, to be able to just kind of let go of where I failed, to see, myself as one, with the divine, and then to see myself be the person that I want to be. And then I'm able to fall asleep with peace rather than going over the list of my wrongs. Because isn't it, the clearest thinking you can ever do is like 1 a.m. when you can't fall asleep.
Oh my God. My brain's so busy when I sleep, not necessarily in a bad way. I think maybe very recently I talked about this on the podcast. I can't remember. I say so much in a day. Who knows who I said it to, when, where, or why. But, sleep is a really important time for us to digest our experiences, and so if we go to bed in this frame of mind of peace, love, positive visualization, we digest that into our beings, whatever that means. In the Ayurvedic practice, they talk about good sleep is really, that's what I was talking about. I did a podcast about Ayurveda. That's right. And I talked about this, that good sleep is really important for Ayurveda because it's the time when we digest our food, we digest our day, and we digest our thoughts. And so, if we wake up at 1 a.m. with this like amazing thought, this great idea of inspiration, it's because we're digesting, we're taking all that stuff in and making sense of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
I do a ton of thinking in my sleep. Sometimes it does bother me. Sometimes I'm like, okay, can we like get some sleep here for real? But so when I was wrapping up my master's degree, all of my ideas came to me in my sleep for my thesis, all of them, and eat word for word. And then I would just get up in the morning and then transcribe everything that came to me in my sleep. And I swear to you, I mean, of course I had to sit and write for real. But most of my ideas were brought to me in my sleep.
I believe that because when you sleep, your conscious mind is surrendered, that the monkey brain, the biological part of you, and the real self is able to come through and bring through all this beauty and inspiration.
Now, of course, stupid things happen sleeping too. I have a tattoo on my foot that I wish I didn't get. And I dreamt last night that it was fading away on its own. But I don't think that's really going to happen.
You never know.
Well, it is fading. The color is coming out because it's getting old. So
we'll think positive.
That's right. So Natalie, tell me, do you have any last thoughts that you would like to share with the Dharma Drops audience?
I just would want to say that I know I talked about a lot of, complex things, but I just want all of you to know that no matter where you are on your journey, that you're in the right place, and to be patient with yourself. And, if you can't meditate even 5 minutes a day, don't beat yourself up over it. Just accept yourself for where you are and love yourself for wanting to try, and just take it one step at a time. And when you put that intention out to the universe and saying, that I want to experience this joy of life, I want to heal, I want to change, I want to draw good things into my life, that the universe will rise up and meet you exactly where you are.
I think what you said about loving yourself for wanting to try is really important, because that act in itself will lead to whatever whatever it is that you want, whether it's to meditate for 3 minutes in the morning, to do your yoga practice. It might not be that day, but that is a practice of awareness in itself.
It is. And it's beautiful.
It is.
Everything you do to try is beautiful. Don't ever compare yourself to somebody else.
For sure. Because that's definitely, as they say, the thief of joy, for sure.
It really is.
This has been a great conversation, and I want to make sure that the Dharma Drops audience knows where they can get your information, where they can buy your books and learn more about you.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you so much. They can follow me on Instagram. It's official Natalie Banks. Also, my books are available. I can't talk now. Available on Amazon. If you search for Natalie Banks, I wrote them all except for one. I think about a race car driver. There's another Natalie Banks. That's not me. Oh. And if anybody wants to email me at nataliebanksnovels@gmail.com. I welcome your comments or questions, or if you want a little bit of advice, like I said, I'm not an expert, but I'm, always willing to talk to people. So feel free to drop me a line.
Excellent. And what I'll do too in the show notes, I will add some links to your book, so that way folks can check them out right there.
Thank you so much.
You are so welcome. Natalie, thank you so much for joining today on the podcast. I really appreciate it. And I can't wait to see how your seeds grow once you get them planted.
I know I will be sure to share pictures with you. And thank you so much for having me. I just felt like I was just sitting down having a conversation with a friend.
Well, you are.
That's right. Budding from seedlings.
That's right. You know, those seeds, just to think about the seeds for a second, I had 1,000 packs of those seeds because they were supposed to be giveaways for festivals all summer long, but all the festivals are canceled, you know?
Yeah.
So it was really sweet to be able to pass them out and, you know, make new friends that way and still connect with the community. So I'm glad that we were able to connect that way.
I am too, and you're so generous. I was just tickled, and such good energy. Like you're putting out a lot of light and good energy. It came through just on even the seeds.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Guys, thanks so much for listening to the podcast. And you know that you can always find me on Instagram at Dharma Drops Podcast, and all the shenanigans always are available at dharmadropspodcast.com. All right, guys, until we meet again next time. Bye. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Dharma Drops. And just to help make your day a little bit brighter, little Hanky wants to do a trick for you. Hanky, speak. Yeah, good boy. One more time. Hanky, speak. Yeah, good boy. Don't forget, if you want to follow all the Dharma Drops shenanigans, you can find me at dharmadropspodcast.com and on Instagram at Dharma Drops Podcast. Additionally, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to Dharma Drops Podcast on whatever app you're listening on. It's a great way to show your support and to share the podcast with others. Okay, my friends, that's it for this episode. Hank wants to say bye to you guys. Hanky, speak. Yeah, good boy. All right. Bye, guys.